Thank you so much for joining. I'm Allie Richards, for those that don't know me, and I'm so grateful that you all are spending your chilly night with us. So usually we like to do this in one big Zoom room, but we actually had to pivot to the webinar because there were so many folks who signed up, and I just so appreciate you all for that. Thank you for being so engaged in this moment. We only have had this bill for about 24 hours. So we only know, the first 24 hours worth of information about it, which is exactly right for where we are today. And we're excited to share that with you. And we really, really want to hear your Q&A. All right. So we want to hear your questions and have a chance to answer them. We're not going to have probably enough time to answer all of them, but put them in the Q&A button here on Zoom and keep them coming. We'll answer as many as we can. And there'll be opportunity to ask more questions afterwards. So here we go. We have a bill. We have a bill. Okay. Woo! Let's all just let that sink in. It is such a major milestone. It is such a huge moment for all the work we have done together. We just would not be here in the game with a vehicle for childcare transformation without all of you. Okay. So it's a historic moment. It is a milestone in this campaign. So what happened? A bill was introduced in the Vermont Senate with 17 sponsors. That's over half of the Senate. Okay. It was introduced by Senators Lyon and Hardy. And, it's because of the work we have done together to get to a point that we are looking at a bill as the vehicle for a high quality, affordable childcare system with public funding that will sustain it into the future. Okay. So this is the main thing we all need to understand. This bill will make Vermont's childcare system more affordable and accessible, but it is by no means a final product. I just have to impress this key point, okay? This is the process that we've always known it is going to be. It is a moment of celebration and a moment of hope, I'll even say, for all of us, right? Especially those who are most struggling right now with the childcare crisis, either as an early educator or a parent or an employer that can't hire. So it's a moment of hope, it's a moment of celebration, and it is not a finished product. So we have work to do together here, but we are ready. We are more than ready for that work. So what is the work ahead? The work ahead is to stay true to our principles of what we've been fighting for. A system where no family pays more than 10% of their household income on their childcare. A system that is accessible, where everyone who needs it has access to quality childcare. One that compensates our early educators. Okay, this bill makes significant progress in those areas. As we continue to digest the details, we'll know where we have what we need and where we need to make it go farther and where we need to strengthen it. So a significant portion of this bill does address the things we've all been working towards, and Sarah and Drake are about to walk you through those specific details. The entire sort of point here is, this is our vehicle. This is a process. Our champions are ready to listen to facts, to listen to merit, and really make sure that they're keeping the best interests of kids and families in mind. And that is our interest too. All right. We got to listen to best practice. We got to keep our principles and our values at the core of everything we do, the vision of the system we are fighting together to make. And no half measures are going to work, right? We have to have a full solution that is fully funded, that truly meets the needs of our kids, our families, our early educators, our employers. That is our vision. We're gonna keep having that as our sort of measuring stick in our minds as we do this work together. But this is an important moment here, and this is our vehicle to do that work. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Drake to really walk you through the details of this bill that, again, 24 hours ago was dropped into the world after decades of our collective work. So Sarah, please take it from here.
Thanks, Allie. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I also wish I could see all of your faces, but I know you're here with us in spirit. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we know so far about what's in the bill, based on our very quick review. As Allie said, we've had this bill for like 24 hours now. So we've been doing a deep dive, and we know that the legislature has not even had a walkthrough of the bill yet. That's happening tomorrow morning. So we are starting with what we know right now, but we wanted to make sure that everybody was in the loop very quickly and sort of knew what to expect next for next steps. So the first thing I want to say to you all is that this bill is a starting point. And that is a really important thing to remember, right? So this bill, the introduction of the bill is super exciting. It's something we've been waiting for years now, and it's just the beginning in many ways. So legislators are going to now spend the next weeks and months taking testimony, debating parts of the bill, and shaping a final version that they're going to bring to a vote. And then, so it's likely going to start in the Senate, right? Because it's a Senate bill, and then it will go to the House, and they'll do it all over again, taking testimony, debating, reshaping, and then that final bill will be sent to Governor Phil Scott for approval. So what you see now in this bill is almost certainly not what the final bill is going to look like. So you have to just remember that this bill is a starting point. So we don't want to get too attached to anything in this version of the bill. It will definitely change, and you can all be part of that change. So your voices are going to be so important in this legislative process as the bill moves forward. The more that lawmakers hear from stakeholders, the more likely we are to have the strongest possible final bill. So legislators are going to need to hear how details in the bill would affect you and children and families in your community. And that's the work that we all have to do together in the coming weeks and months. So I'm going to turn it over to Drake to talk a little bit about sort of the components that we really like in here as a starting point. And then I'll talk about some of the pieces that we want to improve upon as the bill moves forward. And then we're going to talk about how you can become engaged. Go for it, Drake.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, folks. It's good to see all of your names in the attendee list. And yeah, so the bill is 107 pages. We're still learning more. And as Sarah said, the committees in the Senate have not also had a walkthrough of the bill yet. So there's a lot more to learn. But I want to walk through some of the components of the bill that at this point, as far as our understanding goes, we're really excited as a starting point. Particularly some sections and proposals around the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. And just to give you a reference, this section of the bill starts on page 96 out of 107. So there's a lot of content here. But what this bill does in its current form is it proposes some really important changes to the Child Care Financial Assistance Program for children starting at birth. And I'm just going to walk through what some of those are really quickly and then throw things back to Sarah. So what the bill proposes as introduced is it would calculate payments to programs for the Child Care Financial Assistance Program based on the cost of care, including increased compensation for early childhood educators instead of the current system, which is according to market rates. It would also expand eligibility for families up to 450% of the federal poverty level by July of 2024 within CCFAP. Currently, we're eligibility caps at 350%, so that would be a significant increase. The bill also would ask DCF to work with Building Bright Futures to establish tiered professional compensation standards for employees in childcare programs by 2024. It includes funding to provide staff retention payments to childcare programs, including family childcare home providers in 2023, so this year. The bill would switch to an enrollment-based payment system instead of the current system, which uses attendance-based payments. It would also remove all work, education, and health eligibility requirements from the CCFAP program so that eligibility for that program would be determined solely based on family income. And it would also create a non-citizen childcare financial assistance program for families who are not eligible for CCFAP due to citizenship status. So those are all really important components of the bill related to CCFAP. A couple of other positive changes the bill proposes include creating a new property tax exemption for family childcare home programs, as well as for property owners that provide space to childcare programs for at least 25% below fair market value. And then the bill also proposes that the state provide additional funding for early childhood educator scholarships, which we know there's a really high demand for in the state, and those programs have been really successful. So it's great to see that there's language in the bill that would continue support for that program. So those are just a few of the things that are really exciting, positive starting points. And then I want to throw it back to Sarah to talk about some of the other parts of the bill that we're excited to work on improving.
Thanks, Drake. So we also want to talk about some of the areas in the bill that we can work to improve together. So the first piece of that is that the bill does propose a series of sweeping changes to Vermont's universal pre-K program, and those changes would have consequences for families and childcare programs. So the bill would require all public schools to offer universal, voluntary, full school day, full school year pre-K to all 4-year-olds in their district, either in their school buildings or by contracting with a neighboring school district. And as a part of that, it would remove all 3-year-olds from the existing universal pre-K system and would remove private partner programs from the universal pre-K program. So private partner programs who are in the UPK system right now would still be allowed to provide care to 4-year-olds who choose to attend using financial support from CCFAP, the Child Care Financial Assistance Program, if they're eligible, or paying out of pocket. Those are some pretty significant changes to our current universal pre-K system. And I'll say it's not clear to us that this proposal would preserve the mixed delivery system and maintain the critical support for families that provides right now. So we're really looking forward to talking about that more with the legislature and continuing to improve that proposal. The bill also proposes some really significant governance changes that don't align with the recommendations of the systems analysis report that the legislature commissioned and that was delivered last summer. So the proposal would create a deputy secretary for early childhood education at the Agency of Education and would sort of divide up the current Department for Children and Families into 2 departments, with a new Department for Economic Empowerment that would oversee child support, economic opportunity, disability determination, and economic services. And then Department for Children and Families would have responsibility for child development, family services, children with special health needs, and maternal and child health. Those are some pretty significant changes to the governance of early childhood, and they don't, on their face at least, align with the recommendations from the systems analysis report. So again, we're really looking forward to working with the committees through the legislative process to strengthen those proposals. And again, that's where your voices are going to be really important in helping to inform the legislature about all of these proposals. So I'm now going to pass it over to Suzanne to talk about how we can all be part of this process moving forward.
Thank you, Sarah. And we will, after I am done, we will jump to questions and answers. So just know we see your questions and we are here to answer them. Yes, this is so exciting. This is a big deal. This would not have happened without decades of work. We would not be here where we have a starting place. And we know that there's a lot of work to do. Our goal here at Let's Grow Kids is to make sure that this is the strongest bill possible for all Vermonters, that we meet the needs of both families and caregivers and our early childhood educators in our programs across the diversity of program types that we run. It can be both. It can be both really exciting and the start of a lot of work, a lot more work. And we're so close. We are so close. We're so close to having a bill that solves this crisis. So what the work looks like for the short term is a lot of, here in LGK land, figuring out really what is in the bill and what our next steps are around the State House. For you, we need your help. The biggest thing in this immediate moment is for you to send messages to your senators and House representatives, letting them know that this is a fight that we are in for and that we are committed, right? That you are committed to ensuring that we have the strongest bill possible. In the chat, Rhea will put a link to our advocacy form. You all been around. You know our advocacy form. This is a really easy way for you to send messages to your representatives that let them know exactly where you're at. They will go to both our senators and to your House reps. The next big thing that's happening that we want to make sure is on all of your radars is April 12th. We are going to have a big old rally in front of the State House. This is going to be a really important moment for us to come together as a movement and show the power and strength of this movement and get this over the finish line as something really great. And then just a heads up for all of you in our early childhood educator community, we will also be doing a deeper dive. Our policy team will be doing a deeper dive into the nitty-gritty of this policy on the 7th of February. Stay tuned and look out for an email from Sherry, which will be coming soon or should be in your inbox already. Thank you, as always, for all of your advocacy and work to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the moment. I'm going to turn it back to Allie to walk us through the question and answer.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And I think I just so appreciate your energy. You bring the words per minute down by so many next to me. And I so appreciate that. That message is so important. It's so important that it has to be heard and heard in a slow way that we can all absorb. I just want to say again, what is the most important thing, and I'm starting to see the questions come in the chat. Thank you. We're moving to the questions now for the remainder of the time. As you just heard from Sarah and Drake and what I said up top, now you really understand what we mean by, look, we have been working together on this for decades, right? I mean, just Let's Grow Kids as a facilitator of this campaign and all of your voices for 10 years. And this is the vehicle for the childcare work that we are working on together. This is the vehicle that will move us through the process. Everything in this draft bill right now, this is not how it is going to look. So that's why it's just really important for us to remember the moment we're in right now. The moment we're in is we have a vehicle, we have our workhorse to put our vision that we share for a high quality, affordable, accessible childcare system that keeps the needs of kids and their families at the forefront, that's based on research and best practice with affordability and compensation for early educators, at the forefront, that is realistic, right? That is our goal. We will continue to say that. We will continue to sort of support that in every dimension of this work. But now I will just say, remember, the puzzle pieces are in place. We have the RAND report, we have the governance study, now we have this bill. We also have supporters on the ground with us in the legislature. They have the best interests of kids in mind. They listen, and they really are going to hear from you, and they're going to listen to you, and they will listen to merits, and they will listen to fact, and they will listen to reason. And that's our work that we have to do now, to really understand what parts of our vision that we've been fighting for are right in here, like Drake said, and what are the pieces that we're really looking forward to improving based on your experience, based on research, based on best practice. That is our work together today. So, and not just today, maybe we can call it a night when we're done here. Tomorrow, the next day, the next many, many weeks, culminating in this moment where you all come with everyone on April 12th to really make sure your voices are heard, right? We have to have action, and it has to be a high quality, affordable childcare system that works for everyone. Okay, so that is what we're doing here. So that being said, let's move to the questions and see if we can get some detail here. So the first one, Drake, I think this one's for you. Does this bill include family childcare homes or just apply to center-based programs? Nope. Sarah, this one's for you. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Allie. So the short answer is yes, the bill does apply to family childcare homes. So the Child Care Financial Assistance Program expansion that Drake talked about would apply to all childcare programs across settings. So that includes family childcare homes, centers, for-profit, nonprofit, anybody who is eligible to accept CCFAP, the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. This bill applies to you. So it would apply across all of those settings. And it applies for early childhood educators across all those settings. So Drake also talked about the fact that the bill proposes to set some compensation standards, and then the Child Care Financial Assistance Program rates would be raised enough that programs would be paid enough to be able to pay those wages and benefits to early childhood educators, to the folks working in their childcare programs. And that also applies across all settings. So everybody who can accept CCFAP would be getting those higher rates. So yes, those components of the bill do apply across all childcare settings.
Great. Okay. The next question is, where can I find the bill and all of its details? Sarah, why don't you take that one?
All right. I'm actually going to pop a link in the chat. I think I can send to everyone here. So this is a link to the bill itself on the legislative website. We did note it's 107 pages long, and I will say again, don't get too wedded to any of the details in this bill. So this is what was introduced, and it will almost certainly change, and probably pretty quickly as soon as they start diving into the details of the bill in committee, which will start tomorrow. But there's the bill if you want to have a little bedtime reading and dive into it. So there's that.
Great. Okay. Okay, we got a bunch more. How will we pay for it? Drake, you got fresh legs. Why don't you take that one?
Great question. So we don't know yet. And the one thing about this bill is that it doesn't identify a funding source as it was introduced. So there are some parts of the bill that include appropriations, but the sort of overall funding mechanism, especially that revenue side of things, is not currently included in the bill. So that's something that the Senate is going to have to consider. And again, the House will as well once they begin work on the bill. And yesterday afternoon, so the bill was introduced yesterday, a little after 1 p.m. And yesterday afternoon, the Senate Finance Committee actually began taking testimony on potential funding sources. So they'll be considering a whole host of different options, including the suite of options that were presented and included in the RAND study, the Child Care Financing Study that came out last month that I think a lot of folks have had a chance to take a look at. So there's a lot more discussion to happen around funding sources. And that's something that, again, we're gonna be tracking very closely to make sure it's sufficient, it's sustainable, it's a long-term funding source, and it's something that's gonna really support long-term transformation in our childcare system.
Amazing. Okay, thank you. And I will say there's some really amazing conversations happening in the committees already about this. They're serious. Again, let's try always to keep the big picture in mind, because we are pushing towards success here, and there is no other option, right? So we will go for it. And some of your questions get to this, and we will address those now. But I think the conversations you're hearing about the funding in the Finance Committee and others are, well, we have to fix this. So the question is not if, but how, and what does that look like? And let's also understand, like, we can't do it partially. What's the full amount that we have to really fix this? So, there's some really wonderful opening chatter about that we're following very, very closely. But as Drake said, exactly, it's sort of, more to come on that, and it is not addressed in this draft. Okay, one other one I'm probably gonna have questions after this call. Where can I ask them as I get more information?
So that's great. I think we're still figuring out what questions we have. So it makes a lot of sense that there are probably some folks that don't know what questions they have yet. And I know there are a ton of questions, especially about some of the parts of this bill that we're going to get to. We have a lot of time to chat with you all. We really intentionally wanted to save the most time for questions and answers. But if folks come up with questions, you can reach out to any of us. There are many friendly LGK staff that are happy to chat with you. But if it's easier, you can just email info@letsgrowkids.org. And we're also, so there were some folks who submitted questions in advance of this call. There are folks who are submitting them in the chat, in the Q&A. We've been getting questions, via email, in the past 24 hours. We're keeping track of all of those as well. And I will say there's a lot we don't know, especially around specifics. I think a lot of the questions that I'm seeing come in through the Q&A are questions that we also have and we'll be asking. So it's really great to hear from you all what questions you have to make sure that we're being really comprehensive with the types of questions that we're asking too around the bill. But please keep them coming. We'll keep track of them. I think our plan is to follow up as well after this call, because there are a lot of folks here, and there are a lot of folks who also registered and want to get follow-up information, a link to the recording, those types of things. So this is really the beginning of the conversation. But by no means the end. I think we've said that probably a number of times at this point.
Yes, and it's worth impressing. This is a starting point, folks. This is a starting point, and this is the work we've done together. We've practiced together for a long time, and I can tell by your questions you are all ready and prepped for it. So let's keep digging. A bunch of folks have said sort of similar things, so I'm going to address that. So, for example, what's the message for the rally? If there are parts of this bill that we can't support, how are we going to gather for that? In a similar way, someone said, you mentioned that this isn't necessarily what the bill is going to look like. So how do we change it? Do you have a better draft? So really good points, you know, and I think they let us sort of address some of the key pieces here. So what I would say is this is the process. The folks who are the biggest champs, right, who are committed to getting childcare transformation done swiftly are working on this bill in the Senate right now. That is the way that is the path to get this done. It's this draft, and it's getting this draft to be the best it can be without unintended consequences. And this is not a foolhardy group of people. That's why the process exists. You know, they will listen to fact and reason, as I mentioned earlier, and your voices. And if there are unintended consequences, or if there are things that are just not realistic, you know, they will hear that and they will make amendments, you know, to this bill. This is purely a starting point. And what I think, and we've seen this happen many, many times in this body of the State House, there was an idea that for some reason someone thought was a good idea, good enough to put out into the world. And then it has its hearing, it has its time. And, you know, you're going to hear a bunch of national experts, I think, come in and talk about the merits and the facts about child development and good system and good policy. And that's going to really ground them, I think, in some of the ideas in this bill. And then they're going to hear from you all. They're going to hear from you all in various ways, you know. So that's how we change the bill. It's this draft, and it can be edited away. It can be edited in all sorts of ways that make sense, keeping, you know, kids at the heart. And so someone else sort of asked, are you going to have talking points to align the vision with possible changes that we need to make? I would say, of course, yes, we will be continuing to send information out like that. And we already have a really good resource. Sherry Carlson, who's our chief of programs, many of you, maybe all of you know her, an early educator for a long time, deep experience running, you know, private pre-K programs and childcare programs across Vermont. She wrote a very sort of more in-depth email as the bill was introduced, and we can make sure we share that around. But that's sort of a starting point of how we're getting into a little bit more detail on, you know, some of these pieces and how to sort of think through the pieces that we really are excited to improve together. And then someone else mentioned, don't let the 107 pages get you down, keep reading. I really appreciate that one, because it's the idea of, okay, as Drake said, some of the best things are at the end, and I'll repeat some of them, right? Decoupling the worker requirement, an enrollment-based system, increasing eligibility to much higher, you know, income levels. These are the components we have all been working towards together, and they are chock full of them in the final like 7 pages of the bill. So, you know, keep reading it, And all right, so people have asked, how do they testify? Sarah and Drake, I'm going to hand this one to you. A bunch of people have asked in various ways. Do you need us to testify? If so, how? How can we, etc.?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Suzanne.
Yeah, I think Sam and I are going to work on a little form for you to fill out for the follow-up, so that if folks are interested in testifying, you can fill out through Mobilize, which is what we use to manage volunteers and community participation. So there'll be a sign up in that follow-up email. That way you don't get lost, because these notes may get lost.
So yes, this is the beauty of the legislative process. Please, Drake. Please.
Sorry, thank you, Ali. And that's, I think we want to make it as easy as possible for folks. I just will also say there are going to be, I've also seen some comments. There's a lot in the Q&A here, so we're going to do our best to get through it. But I've seen some folks ask about, like, is this a done deal? Is this a starting point? So this is a bill that's been introduced in the Vermont Senate yesterday. It is absolutely the starting point of this journey of the childcare bill. So we anticipate that the House will be introducing their version of a childcare bill as well, which will be likely similar to the Senate version. The Senate is going to be starting first. So the Senate Health and Welfare Committee will be taking testimony there, and there will be, you know, these folks really are legislators really want to do a thorough job here and want to make sure that the legislation that they're working on and that they will ultimately pass is meeting the needs of Vermont's children, families, early educators, and communities. So there will be many, many ways for folks to engage, whether that's testifying, you know, formally to a committee, whether that's building relationships with your elected officials, whether that's coming to the State House and meeting with folks in person. There are so many ways to share your experiences, your expertise, your knowledge about what will work for you, for your family, for your program, for your staff. And if legislators are going to be looking to you all to advise them on what is going to support Vermonters and what's going to make this legislation as strong as possible. And I think that's one of the best things about the system that we have in Vermont is that we truly do have a legislature that wants to hear from folks across sectors. And I think that's particularly important when it comes to our childcare system because it's such a complex system. And our reps and senators know the level of expertise and passion for this field. So we're going to do our best to keep you all engaged in this at every step so that folks know what's happening. There will be a lot of stops for this bill as well. It's really comprehensive, so it's going to have to go to multiple committees in the House and the Senate. So there are just a lot of opportunities. And we know that the bill that is introduced will not be the final outcome because of that process. And I think that also is intentional on the part of legislators as well.
And
I'll just add to what Drake just said too, that that the bill sponsors themselves have said that they know that this is a starting point for the conversation. So just affirming that notion. And as the bill works its way through, there will certainly be opportunities for some testimony, like in person or remote to committees. And even if that time is limited, there are lots of opportunities to submit written testimony to committees, and we can certainly support people to do that and craft it and get it into the right places, the right times.
Thank you. There's a question about, is there something about salaries for early educators in here? And yes, there is. Sarah, would you like to talk about that?
Sure, yeah, so we talked about it a little bit. So the way that the bill is structured, it would have the Department for Children and Families working with Building Bright Futures create a compensation scale for people working in childcare programs through a rulemaking process. And that would apply to any program that was participating in the Childcare Financial Assistance Program. And then the idea is that the Childcare Financial Assistance Program would be paying rates that are high enough to enable programs to actually pay in accordance with the compensation scale. So that again applies across all settings to any program participating in childcare financial assistance. So that's kind of the core of this initiative, right, is to make sure that we have capacity because early childhood educators, folks working in childcare programs are paid well in alignment with your professional expertise. And that the state is investing into that childcare financial assistance program to pay rates to programs to enable folks to pay those wages and provide benefits.
Great. Okay, fantastic. So we had a bunch of people kind of ask a very factual question that I think we can factually answer. Are there enough spots in the public schools to take all the 4-year-olds? And the answer is no, there are not. And there's another question, which is, let's see. Are you seeing anything in terms of funding increased childcare infrastructure? And so I think that's a really interesting question from someone who's spending a lot of time on an infrastructure project in central Vermont. So that's interesting. This bill is really about sustainable operations, right, for the childcare system that we've all been fighting for. Sarah, do you want to mention what's in it or not? And then I can sort of talk maybe a little bit about reminder of sort of the earmark and other things we have going on.
Yeah, so the bill itself doesn't contain specific capacity building funding. We believe that the governor's budget recommend does include the continued capacity building money that they've been putting into the system for years now. The real capacity growth, right, comes from being able to attract and retain people working in childcare programs. That's our big inhibitor of being able to grow childcare capacity right now. I hear it from childcare programs every day that they would expand tomorrow if they could hire the staff. So that's why the bill really focuses on making sure that we're increasing CCFAP expenditures to the point where childcare programs are getting rates that will allow them to compensate people in a way that they can actually afford to keep working in childcare, make it a sustainable profession, and attract new people to the field. So that's kind of the tack that the bill is taking in terms of increasing capacity. And then there's also other supports that I think you wanted to talk about, Allie, right, to help grow capacity for childcare programs.
Exactly. Yeah, we understand, obviously it's like there's bricks and mortar, and then there's, the system with early educator pipeline and the sustainable operations. We've been working, as you know, for some time on infrastructure through the programs team with Make Way for Kids grants. There's some really exciting new pieces of that puzzle. One being Senator Leahy and his parting moments as our senior senator gave a love letter, to this and an acknowledgement of the hard work we've been doing, and is put $10 million towards in building out infrastructure of childcare across Vermont. So we look forward to, in the coming months, understanding from HUD, the agency that will do that, those details, and using those dollars to support childcare capacity across Vermont. That's also in conjunction with the establishment of the First Children's Finance Office in Vermont, which is for small business technical assistance, and this sort of work ongoing, right, in perpetuity, is a part of the sector of early child education and childcare. So we are making very deep inroads into the the philosophical approach of this is a profession, this is a sector, this is real. And by the way, this is why these folks who are, in this legislature, they also get this. And some folks are sort of asking questions about, well, how can we ensure that if one of this bill, like the pre-K piece, moves forward, and then how, will the CCFAP pieces move forward? I really have to say, this is our work together, but we have done really deep work to ingrain the values and the necessities of childcare into our legislative champions and into the world in Vermont. You all have done that. That's real, and that doesn't go away. And that's what is it. Thank goodness we've built that together, because we need it now, right? I do not believe this legislature would make really, unknowing changes that would have unintended consequences or very known consequences in that way. But that is our work together to hold them accountable. But we work very closely with these folks, and we have deep, reason to believe that they would not do something like that. To put even more of a fine point on it, there's two very good questions that are very similar that have come in. How do we express our concerns about pre-K pieces without getting into the weeds of pre-K while supporting the childcare pieces of the bill? Another sort of similar way of putting that I thought was very well worded. If we have concerns about a portion of the bill, such as pre-K, what's the best way to support the bill as a whole while addressing our concerns, particularly with our own legislators? Great question. Sarah, I'm going to let's tag team this one. These are great questions, folks, because this is what we're trying to say today, right? This is our bill. This is our vehicle. We need a vehicle to carry the pieces through the process to the finish line. Luckily, it has lots of stops and has lots of testimony. And the thing is, we know what works with folks, right? Thank you, gratitude. We know this is hard. You're digging in, you're doing the work with us, and you're listening. Thanks for getting it to this point. And I want to make sure this is best practice. This is our experience. This is what we know about children. This is what we know about what our families need. And so, to that point, because I think this is the theme that is coming up quite a bit in our Q&A, when I say things like best practice, we know that best practice is a mixed delivery system. I just want to say that. I feel like it needs to be said, right? We know that. That's well trodden. We've been on the record saying that a lot. That is in all of our white papers. That is in our legislative testimony. So, I just want to be clear. So you can pivot, hold on to these pieces. This is the vision. Come back always to this collective voice that we have built together. Accessible, high quality, affordable, right? Equitable, real, right? We have this measuring stick, and it's meaningful for us to continue to have a unified voice on that. Sarah, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm the reason that I can be excited about this bill is because I have such faith in all of you. There are over 100 people here tonight. There are hundreds more around the state who are so passionate about making lasting change that is truly best for children and families and our existing childcare system. And you all are experts in what your families need and what your communities need and what your programs need. And legislators listen to you. So I have so much faith in this movement and our ability to craft the strongest final possible bill. And there will be, as we've said several times, so many opportunities to influence it as we go forward in the coming weeks and months. And your voices are going to be such a key part of that. So I think focusing, as Ali said, focusing on the parts that we do like, and even the child care financial assistance program pieces are really strong and they can be improved upon, right? We want them to go even farther, and your voices are going to be crucial in making that happen. They can go bigger than what they've proposed here. And they're already starting to dig into that across a couple of different committees. So we need to keep the pressure on. We need to let people know what children and families and communities and employers and childcare programs deserve, what we all need from this system. And we have to make our voices loud about what's the impact of proposals in here, both the fabulous impact and the opportunities to keep growing what's in here, the opportunities to improve on what's in the bill. And you all are going to be a key part of that, is what I would say. And I have faith in us. I'm not freaking out because this is an exciting moment. We have a really strong starting place. And we're going to keep you all informed all the way along.
Yeah, it can't be overstated. We are trying to transform an entire sector. You know, a lot of education has gone into that, of our legislators, of our, you know, of the public, you know, of all of our champions. You know, you all have been at the forefront of doing that education. This is not easy stuff. And one step at a time. You know, if we lose our big step, which is this bill and this vehicle, then where are we? It's really, really important that we keep that faith and we understand that we have the power to move and shake. Look, you know, it's very perplexing, you know, why this, like where this idea even really comes from, right? And so that's why there's a process. That's why there's a process. And there will very clearly hear right away from folks going on the record about Vermont being a leader currently in access to pre-K, on the merits of the mixed delivery system, on child development, and everything that we all know and you all know. And it's, by the way, reading through the Q&A that's continuing, by the way, to formulate here, and we will not get to all these questions. I want to reiterate that again, but we'll have them all. We'll be reaching out. We might batch them and reach out in other ways. You know, it reads like an expert testimony list already about the merits. So we're not here, you know, to do all this sort of like factual Q&A at the moment, because we don't even have all the information. There's also a lot of really interesting questions about with this exact draft. So what does that mean for this age group? What does that mean for these caps? What does that mean for these income levels? The moment that we are in is we're learning it, we're digesting it. The committee has not even gotten a walkthrough of this bill from their general counsel, their legislative counsel. So we will be tuning in very attentively to that, understanding the ins and outs more and more, and continuing to lend our voice to make these significant, you know, changes, improve upon what we need to improve upon, and nurture the pieces that do our, you know, our heavy lifting for us. So
Ali, I just want to jump in because I want to just emphasize what you were saying. There are a lot of questions that we've gotten that are very specific about the universal pre-K proposals. So thank you all for sending those. We are learning more, as Ali said, and if folks want to tune in tomorrow morning, the Senate Health and Welfare Committee is going to get that walkthrough of the bill at 9:30. We can, once I stop talking, I can put a link to that committee's webpage in the chat if folks want to watch. So that'll be the first time that they're really getting the top to bottom walkthrough of all the language. Folks can ask questions in the committee. There's a lot that we still need to learn about the impacts of that proposal. But as folks have said, like, we know what best practice is. We know that there are a lot of folks who are really concerned about what the potential impacts of that component of the bill are, and we're definitely paying really close attention. So I just want to honor that, because we can't answer a lot of those questions that are very specific since the committee hasn't had a walk through that bill, and we just saw that language for the first time yesterday afternoon. So we're doing our best to learn as much as possible, and I know we'll have a lot more conversation about it as this process moves forward. But I want to make sure folks don't hear that from us, that you're hearing this from us right now, that we hear you and we're excited to learn more along with you about it.
So this is where we are. Great. Thank you all so much, again, giving your time on a freezing evening to tune in, understand where we are, understand where we're going. I'll just say again, this is 10 plus years, you know, of work to have a bill introduced. It is not a finished product. Roll up our sleeves. Like, this is what we've been training for. This is the vehicle. This is the process. This is what we've been training for. It is a moment of celebration that there is a vehicle, there's a workhorse, and we have, we're in the game, we're in the room, we're doing the work. And again, don't forget, there's a very strong RAND report by a third party, experts that is on the table. There's a governance study of other experts that both have a lot of credibility and a lot of weight. And we have you all have built these champions in the legislature that truly do understand what you're talking about, what you need from this, what we all need to have our system of high quality, affordable care that is truly accessible for all in Vermont, that compensates early educators, and that really is affordable for families. So that is our vision, our shared vision. We will continue to double down on it at every pass. And you all are right there with us, shoulder to shoulder. So our work is now, and here we go. And I can tell, we're all going to feel really ready to come on April 12th, hug each other, high five each other, tell the world what we need. And either it's a big old thank you and keep going, or it's we need you to focus your pencils, sharpen your pencils, right? Or all the above. So this is the work we do together. We're just going to stay in as close communication as we can throughout this. And as folks said, this is going to change. It's going to change quickly and a lot. So thank you for being who you are, for being engaged, for being part of this, for getting us to where we are today. And here we go. We got to make this as good as it can be and get over the finish line.